The OKC Thunder are being forced into a massive roster decision currently, as the deadline is approaching to decide on their third and final two-way player for this upcoming season. Sports Illustrated dropped an article earlier today on the top five options that may end up occupying this spot, which is what we're going to get into here today. But before we get into who these five players are, what their skill sets they bring to the table are, what they've done in the Summer League for the Thunder and one for another team, as well as their production at their previous level of playing, real quick, Gabriel Ebersole here with Thunder Digest, where we've hit our goal of 6.2K now we're sitting at, and we're trying to hit 7K before July. 68% of you guys watching are not subscribed to the channel. The Thunder just won 68 games, just won the title, and they're reloading to try and go back-to-back next year. But in the meantime, we've got you guys covered with everything offseason all in one spot. I'm talking trades, I'm talking signings, I'm talking Summer League, hopefully no injuries, anything Thunder basketball, you can get it right here from me and Bryson. So make sure you're subbed up and notified so you don't miss anything. Without further ado, let's get right on into this Thunder team and the dilemma that they are currently sitting in, right? This team just finished up the Summer League, finishing at 4-1. They looked very good in the Summer League. They only lost to the eventual champion Charlotte Hornets, and this team had some bright spots. We saw AJ Mitchell, a guy who got his deal restructured to a multi-year deal, have a great Summer League, and we saw Nikola Topic giving us a little preview of what he can bring in the season. But we need to establish this third two-way contract spot. That's where we sit at right now, right? Because we're taking a look. For the 25-26 season, the Oklahoma City Thunder have two players signed to two-way contracts, Brandon Carlson and Brooks Barnhizer. A third two-way spot remains open. Two-way contracts allow players to split time between the NBA team and its G League affiliate. So like we see here, we have Brandon Carlson, who was on the G League team last year, currently on the two-year deal, coming into two-way deal, excuse me, coming into next year. And then we have the second round pick from this draft, Brooks Barnhizer, also on a two-year deal. This leaves our third slot open, and there is a few guys that we're going to slot in there, which brings us to this Sports Illustrated article. We're going to start discussing the five options for OKC Thunder final two-way spot. The Oklahoma City Thunder have a third two-way spot open on its roster. Who could jump up and take the honors? So right off the bat, getting this contract is huge for any of these guys because Brandon Carlson appeared in 32 games last year on a two-way deal, and he averaged 4 points a game. So you can get NBA minutes, NBA experience, all of the above playing on a two-way deal. That's definitely a thing. You're allowed to play up to 50 NBA games on a two-way contract. So that's going to be the limit for this season for whichever guy we bring in. Now, let's take a look at some of these options. And I like that they picked a nice selection of roles that they're filling, like player archetypes. But the very first one they hit on is what I personally want to see the most, and that is going to be this guy right here, Chris Youngblood, currently on the OKC Summer League roster. And this is a guy who is developed. He played 5 years at the college level, and he played at three different schools. He just recently played his last season at Alabama. Obviously, they played great competition, and they had a great year. This is a guy who averaged double digits across all 5 years he played in college. He played at three different schools, so it's showing he can play in different systems. He shot 40% from three, 3 out of the 5 years, 45% from the field the last 4 years that he's played. This is a guy who can score the ball at a high clip and will be able to walk in day one ready to shoot threes at an NBA level. This is a guy, like we saw, 39.3% in college on 5.6 attempts per game. That is nothing to play around about. That is a guy who is able to develop his shot. He's a 6'4" guard, 212, so he's able to, not get moved off his spot. He's able to provide a little bit of defense, and but mostly he's going to be a catch and shoot player for this team, right? So we take a look at some of his significant performances from this summer league, right? The first one we see here on the 7th of July, he comes off the bench playing 22 minutes to get 15 points, 2 rebounds, a steal, and shooting 4 for 7 on all 3-point attempts with a plus 11 rating. Now, this is what we're going to notice from this guy as we continue to look at across his game log. This was off the bench, the only one of his performances that we're going to look at that were off the bench, but he comes in no time and he sets the tone from deep. He shoots threes. He's not scared to let it fly, and he's hitting them at a very high clip. When we go to take a look at the rest of these games that we're taking a look at in this log, you're going to notice something consistent across all four of these contests. Above 50% from three, double-digit plus minus, at least a steal and a rebound each game. So this is a guy who's contributing in multiple areas, playing winning basketball, playing winning minutes, And then on top of that, he's efficient with what he's doing as his main attribute, which is as a scorer. He's scoring efficiently, he's shooting efficiently, and we are a team that can stand to gain from this. A team that shot 13th out of 16 qualifying teams in 3-point percentage in the NBA playoffs last year, en route to winning an NBA championship. So, yes, we did win and come through in game 7 of the finals last year, but we still have room to improve, and this guy can improve us in an area that we specifically struggled in down the back stretch of last year. So for me, myself specifically, I like to take a look at the rest of these performances. 10th of July, this guy put up 19 points in 26 minutes, 7 for 10, 3 of 5 from 3-point land, and he had a plus 23. Like we're seeing a pattern here. Again, over 50% from three. He's shooting 5 for 8. A plus 38 team rating for this guy. Plus 38 team rating in 22 minutes where he scored 21 points. Final game we're going to take a look at on the 16th of July. He starts again, 23 minutes again, and once again, an efficient player. Over 50% from the field at 5 for 9, 50% from the three at 5 for 6, a plus 15, chips in a steal as well. This is a guy who I think is the best candidate for this final roster slot for the two-way contract because he brings in a specific thing that we need, which is shooting, and that he's also very serviceable in other areas. This is a guy who, like we saw with it from his college stats, across 5 years shot the ball well. Across these summer league games, he shot the ball well. It only makes sense to give a guy like this, who has played 5 years in school, a chance at a two-way deal because he once again can play down if he's not on that exact like hot streak where he's shooting the ball at a serviceable clip for us. We can send him down to the G, let him get his rhythm back, pull him right back up. No sweat. It makes a lot of sense for me to get Chris Youngblood on the team. But another player that they wanted to take a look at and were interested in was Jad Gortman. This was a guy who played in the G League last year for the Texas Legends, and he averaged 18 points, 6 assists, 4 boards, and 2 stocks per game. That's pretty good numbers at surface value. Honestly, he's a do-it-all wing. This is a guy who can play defense. He plays offense. He can initiate some offense as well. He's a decent playmaker for a wing, right? But this guy, the big knock I would have on him from last year was his efficiency. 44% from the floor, a little bit lower than you'd like. 26% from behind the arc, definitely lower than you would like. And for a team that I think, once again, should prioritize bringing in three-point shooting, I think that that's a little bit lower than where you want it to be. But this guy has also made steps in the right direction, which we're going to see from taking a look at his summer league performances, right? Taking a look at a guy who on July 5th, 16 minutes, he shot 4 or 5 for 10 points. Efficient. Then the next game he played, he had 14 minutes and he scored 12 points on 5 for 8 shooting. Once again, efficient scoring in little minutes. And then we see his best game was on the 12th of July, where he played 21 minutes, shot 8 for 11 for 17 points, and made one of his 2 3-point attempts. So, like we saw, this was a guy who did not shoot well. Gortman did not shoot well last year from the three, and we didn't see him taking a large volume of threes in this preseason summer league time. But what we did see was him getting to his spots and scoring from his spots. This guy was efficient scoring in little minutes off of the bench. He only started one game in the summer league, but if we're going to bring in a guy like this on a two-way contract, this is going to be the type of role he's playing, a spark plug off the bench, a guy who's going to be put in for a couple quick minutes, and they're going to need him to be on when he's in there. And that is something I think that he can bring that a guy like Chris Youngblood maybe wouldn't be able to, is that he doesn't need as much time on the court to get warmed up, it seems, and to hit shots. And he also, like I said, chips in a few assists, so he's able to have the ball in his hands a little bit more when he's on the court, as compared to a Chris Youngblood who's going to be spotting up for threes a lot, moving around off screens. This is a guy who you can trust with the ball in his hands a little bit more with your second unit. So maybe you like the way that plays out a little bit better, and maybe you're more of a fan of this sign. I wouldn't hate that. One thing I do hate, though, is this one right here. The third player they bring up is Zakai Ziggler, right? And we take a look at the little analysis that they give for him and his grades, right? It starts off fantastic. They're saying Ziggler is an incredibly scrappy defender, an absolute hound dog capable of causing chaos for the opposition and pushing the floor in transition. He has Thunder DNA pumping through his veins. And I agree. That is exactly what embodies the Thunder, especially at the guard position, is that tough nose, grit, in your chest defense. That is what has embodied this team. However, they continue to say the only problem, he stands 5'9" and is vastly undersized, despite his playmaking making up for it. I believe we have reached the point in basketball, just in progression and just the way that we have just gotten better as players throughout the time, that we are no longer in the time period where a 5'9" guard is going to be a serviceable NBA player to put on almost anybody. He's going to get attacked relentlessly off screens for switches, for any sort of mismatch that you can get on him if he does get to the NBA level, right? But we see in the bottom, he plays for the Detroit Pistons this summer league, and he is averaging 10 points, shooting 40, 50, 100 splits. And then on top of that, he's averaging a rebound, a steal, and 2 assists per game. And that's the numbers he's putting up on top of, as we saw, being mainly a defensive player. So he has had success in the summer league, and good, I'm happy for him. But that does not make me want to feel comfortable bringing him in as the two-way contract player that we're going to bring in, because for him to be the guy that's available to play in the NBA games versus a guy like Chris Youngblood who's going to come in and he's going to shoot threes, versus bringing in a guy who is going to get attacked on defense. Even if that's his strong suit, he will get hunted on defense matchup wise. Even if you get like a 6'8" wing on him, that's a foot mismatch difference, right? So this is a huge, like, I understand like sizes and everything, but size does matter a lot whenever you're getting into above half a foot in matchups. Because then at a certain point, like, you really can't do too much to deter what they're trying to do on offense. And that's why I think that Ziggler falls into this. And that is why I'm not a fan of that, him being on this list at number 3. Now, a more mid-tempered pick, right? We see Malevy Leons. Leons is already on the OKC Thunder G League team. He's already under rights for us. And unless he does what Dukic just did, which is go to play overseas instead of playing under the G League, we should be okay having him right there. But they included him saying Leon is still appealing due to him fitting the Thunder system like a glove. As an off ball player offensively, the swingman thrives at cutting to the rim, working the dunker spot, and sets above average screens for his size. Defensively, his relentless competitiveness allows him to make plays on that end and stack stops for OKC. Now, that's what we see right there. And they said, well, first off, they said for his size defensively, he's 6'9". He's going to play that 3-4 spot if he comes onto the court for us. And he has the size to play that. And like we saw, the defensive tenacity. That's obviously a very big part of OKC. We already said it, that tenacious defense, and he does fit that billing. But I'm just not sold enough on his offensive game to want this to be the move for us, because half of his shot attempts are threes, and he's not an exceptionally great 3-point shooter. And we already have a guy like Jay Will, who's at 6'9", is supposed to be an elite three shooter, and then a stopper on defense. So it kind of is a redundant role to me personally. But and we already have him on the sign, like his G League rights to our team. So it doesn't really make sense for me for us to go him as our final pick at the number 4. Regardless, they did give us one more option to take a look at, and that is Eric Reynolds II. This to me is better than the last two options they gave us, because this was a guy who played 4 years at the collegiate level, a developed player coming in that you don't need to overly fix up on a lot of his tools. And this was a guy who was solid last year at St. Joe's. He averaged 16 points, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, and then 1.2 stocks per game, shooting a little bit low percentage wise, right? We're seeing 38% from the floor, 30% from behind the arc, and 85% from charity stripe. So obviously, it's a little bit inefficient in the scoring department, to say the least. 35% is not where you want it to be, but he did become the St. Joe's all-time leading scorer out of that role, and he likely would be playing a microwave role off of the bench for us. Like we saw with what he is doing, he can score from all areas, not as efficiently as you'd like, but he can rebound, assist, do other areas as well to cover everything on the basis of an NBA court. However, I'm not super big on this prospect. I think there is some good upside with this as a scorer. If he can just pick better spots, honestly, is what more is to me his shot selection. But nonetheless, I don't really want to see this go through. But if it did, I think that there is a higher ceiling than with the last two guys for this move. So I wouldn't absolutely hate it. And it's not a guy we already have under G League rights. So it's at least someone new that we're bringing onto the team. And I like to see him more than Zakai Ziggler, just because, you know, it's just size wise. I don't see it working long term in the NBA. And I think that he has more room to be on an NBA court than Ziggler does. Plus, Ziggler has one of the absolute most outrageous videos you've ever seen on the internet. I don't know if you've seen it. If you do, you know. Without any further ado, though, this was Sports Illustrated's article on how we might utilize that that final two-way spot that we have on the roster. We already have Brandon Carlson. We already have Brooks Barnheiser. We're going to figure out who the third musketeer is to fill it out. Drop in the comment who out of the article you guys are most intrigued in and who you'd like to see us sign. Without any further ado, this is Gabriel Ebersole. I'll catch you guys in the next one.